Now, if you are engaging in exercise, whether or not it's endurance exercise or whether or not it's resistance training exercise, you are going to need additional fluids in order to maximize the effects of that exercise and to avoid dehydration. And there too, we have some excellent numbers that we can look to. Excellent because they arrive from research. And this is largely peeled from the episode that I did with Dr. Andy Galpin, professor of kinesiology at Cal State Fullerton. We did a 6-episode series all about exercise, everything from strength training, hypertrophy, endurance, nutrition, supplementation, recovery, everything related to exercise. You can find all of that at hubermanlab.com. And one of the components of those episodes that was discussed, but that some of you may have not heard, is that there is a simple formula for how much fluid to ingest on average. Keep in mind, this is on average when you're exercising. And I refer to this as the so-called Galpin equation. The Galpin equation states that you should take your body weight in pounds, divide that by 30, and that will give you the number of ounces of fluid to ingest every 15 to 20 minutes on average while exercising. Okay? Your body weight in pounds divided by 30 equals the number of ounces of fluid to consume on average every 15 to 20 minutes. When I say on average, what I mean is it is not the case that you need to stop every 15 or 20 minutes and consume that volume of fluid. You could sip it from moment to moment. You could wait half an hour or an hour and then consume a larger bolus of fluid, a larger amount. Although it is recommended for performance sake that you sip or consume beverages fairly consistently throughout your training. One's ability to do that is going to depend on a number of things like gastric emptying time, whether or not the particular exercise you're doing, whether or not it's running or jumping, is compatible with ingesting fluid on a regular basis, or whether or not you need to do it at different intervals than every 15, 20 minutes. Maybe it's every 5 minutes, maybe it's every half hour. You have to adjust for you. But if you were to take the hour of exercise or the half hour of exercise or the 3 hours of exercise and ask how much fluid to ingest, it's going to be that Galpin equation of body weight in pounds divided by 30 equals the number of ounces for every 15 or 20 minutes. And of course, I can already hear screaming from the back, what about for those of us who follow the metric system? And there's a simple translation of the Galpin equation, which is that you need approximately 2 milliliters of water per kilogram of body weight every 15 to 20 minutes. Again, the Galpin equation converted into the metric system is going to be 2 milliliters of water per kilogram of body weight every 15 to 20 minutes on average. I'm sure a number of you are asking whether or not hydration prior to exercise is also important. It absolutely is. And if you follow the numbers that I talked about before, approximately 8 ounces or 240 milliliters of fluid intake per hour in the first 10 hours of waking, that should establish a good baseline of hydration heading into exercise, which then prompts the next question I often get, which is the amount of water that needs to be consumed according to the Galpin equation during exercise on top of or separate from, that is, does it replace the amount of fluid that one needs at a basic level, that 8 ounces or 240 milliliters? And there, the answer sort of goes both ways. I think if you're going to exercise, then obviously follow the Galpin equation in some way. Again, you don't need to be ultra specific about this. These are ballpark figures that will ensure hydration. So we've set them a little bit higher perhaps than needed to ensure more hydration rather than less. But basically, the short answer is if you're exercising for about an hour, most people are exercising for an hour or two, probably not more than that. Most of my workouts are, certainly the resistance training workouts, last about an hour. Well, then you can replace the 8 ounces or the 240 milliliters of water that's required at baseline with what you consume according to the Galpin equation during that bout of exercise. A common question is if you are exercising in a heated environment, indoor or outdoor, or you are somebody who tends to sweat a lot. And by the way, we can all get better at sweating by sweating more. Sweat is an adaptation. So if you sit in the sauna more, you're going to get better at sweating. If you exercise more, especially if you wear more layers or if you do it in hotter temperatures or more humid temperatures, you're going to get better at sweating over time. And sweating is an adaptation that helps cool your body. If you are sweating a lot or you're in heat, how much fluid should you ingest? In general, I think it's safe to say that you may want to increase the values on the Galpin equation by about 50 to 100%. So either increase by 50% or double those numbers if you're in a very hot environment or sweating an awful lot. If you are sitting in the sauna, I highly recommend consuming at least 8 ounces and probably more like 16 ounces of fluid. So that translates again to about 240 or about 480. Let's just round up 500 milliliters of fluid for every 20 to 30 minutes that you are in a hot sauna. And then, of course, people ask, well, how hot? And okay, that starts getting really detailed, and we can't distinguish between dry saunas and wet saunas. And again, too many variables. But I would double your fluid intake for that hot environment exercise or for that hot environment sauna sit. Also, if you are feeling dehydrated, okay, what does feeling dehydrated mean? That actually has a definition that we can get into a little bit later. But what we're really talking about here is if you are feeling as if your throat is dry, you are quote unquote parched, or you're very thirsty, well, then there's absolutely no problem with ingesting more fluid. So 16 ounces of fluid or 500 milliliters of fluid per hour while you're feeling parched. My read of the literature is that thirst is a reasonable guide for when we tend to be dehydrated. However, it is the case that our thirst doesn't really keep up with our body's level of dehydration. And we know that based on some really nice studies that have explored the amount of fluid intake compared to the amount of urination, compared to the amount of physical output, compared to the environment that one happens to be in. These are sort of older studies in the realm of physiology, but here's the basic rule of thumb that's going to work for most people. If you are feeling parched, consume fluids. Ideally, you consume fluids that don't contain caffeine or other diuretics. Diuretics being substances that cause the release, the urination of fluid from the body. And or if you are consuming caffeine either prior to or after bouts of exercise, or even just at work, or you work in an air-conditioned or otherwise dry, cool, or hot environment, that you try and include some sodium, and ideally sodium, potassium, magnesium, the electrolytes in that beverage. So it could be a little pinch of sea salt with some lemon to adjust the taste a little bit. It could be an electrolyte drink of Element or some other sort. There are a lot of different types out there. For most people drinking pure water, and I realize that many people do just like the taste of pure water, chances are you're going to have enough electrolytes unless you're sweating quite a bit or you're exercising quite a lot. And under conditions where you are consuming very few carbohydrates, you're going to excrete more fluid. If you are ingesting caffeine, whether or not it's from tea or coffee, I highly recommend increasing your non-caffeine fluid intake about 2 to 1 for every volume of caffeine. So in other words, if you have 6 ounces or 8 ounces of coffee, you're going to want 12 to 16 ounces of fluid, ideally fluid with electrolytes or a little pinch of salt, in order to offset that dehydration.